Hey everybody, it's James from Wealthquest. Hey, today I wanted to talk to you about something that's a little bit unique. I want to dive into this idea of what I call financial smoke screens. That may be a word you've never heard of before, mostly because I made it up. But one of the things that I see us doing is explaining decisions that we've made using finances. And I caught myself doing this recently, which is why I wanted to share it with you. We see this all the time, particularly around tax season, where people will explain that they took this action or they made this decision because it made sense on their taxes. You may have explained to someone, for example, that the reason you bought this bigger house is because the mortgage interest is deductible, as if somehow that just makes it always make sense. Or the reason that you bought this car is because the financing just made sense. I was going to have to put tires on my car, my old car, and so it made sense, obviously, for me to spend $30,000 on a new car instead of $800 on tires, right? We use these things as a way to almost kind of drop this smoke bomb in the middle of the conversation and say, pay no attention to the real motivation behind this decision. And I actually caught myself doing this recently because I was explaining to someone, my wife and I recently bought an SUV. We had had a minivan for 11 years, and my kids have grown to a point where we no longer need a minivan. And I caught myself explaining it to someone and saying, well, you know, financially it just made sense. This happened, that happened, it all seemed to work out. And I stopped myself and said, what am I doing? I just didn't want to drive a minivan anymore. I am allowed to want to not drive a minivan. You are allowed to want the things that you want. Don't use the finances as the reason to explain to other people the decision that you made, for a couple reasons. One, it's not authentic. When I finally was able to admit to the person I was talking to, hey, I just didn't want to drive a minivan anymore, they said, yeah, I totally get that, right? It actually helped us connect and have a deeper conversation than if I kept hiding behind the smokescreen. But the bigger risk is that if you actually convince yourself that a financial decision that you made was entirely wise because the finances make sense, when really it was just an emotional decision, you could get yourself in trouble. When you convince yourself that the reason why you should buy this bigger house is because you can deduct the mortgage, or the reason why you should buy that Tesla is because you get a tax credit, those decisions start to become convincing, right? You make all the sense in the world to go after this decision, but the reason you're really doing it is because emotionally you want it. And you can convince yourself that it makes sense when it doesn't. And that's how we end up getting ourselves in trouble. And so what I wanted to challenge you guys with this week is think about the financial smokescreens you're using. What are the conversations you're having with others where you're using math to kind of hide the real reason why you're taking these actions? And what are the conversations you're having with yourself where you're doing the same thing? We want to be making clear-headed decisions because they're what we want and because they make sense, not just because we're trying to convince ourselves that what we want makes sense. I hope that helps you guys. Have a great week. Hey everybody, if you've enjoyed these videos, please continue to like the page and give us comments in the comments section of the conversations you want us to be having with you. We really enjoy doing these. We hope you enjoy them as well. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week.